This is Inside Agriculture on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Rita Frazier. California cattleman Kevin Kester is the current president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. He talked with us about issues facing the nation's cattlemen.
Chinese potential tariff trade war with them. We have EU issues, and then, of course, TPP, and it relates to Japan. And then we have the Farm Bill and the process going through with that. Then we have, as I go across the country, producer concerns about electronic logging devices. That seems to be universal from coast to coast concern, so we're working on that.
You mentioned, too, this morning, even though there are challenges with major trading partners, there's a lot of opportunity in other countries around the world for U.S. beef.
There are. So our trade so far this year for the first 4 months is up 20% totally in value from a year ago, year over year, the first 4 months. So that is really positive news. Hong Kong, it's up 45%. We have Mexico up 16%. Japan, our biggest market, it's up 10%, even over the record values from last year. South Korea has been really outstanding. We're up 45% year over year. So those are success stories, and then we're developing trade in other parts of the world like you mentioned, and so that is a really big success story, and we just need to keep it up and not disrupt it.
And domestically, we heard from McDonald's today. Always encouraging to hear how many beef patties are served up here in this country.
Tens of millions. We work with McDonald's and other major retailers and have relationships, and so a lot of our retailers are getting into different marketing interests based upon consumer demand for sustainability and where's your food come from. So we work relationships with our major retailers to interact and educate the retailers so they don't get off course on their messaging to their consumers.
Kevin Kester, President, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, with a look inside agriculture.
With the RFD Ag Market Summary for this Tuesday morning, I'm Jim Taylor. Corn lower, beans higher, wheat ending Monday lower. July corn closing at $3.56, down 5 1/4. September corn down 5 1/4, $3.65 1/2. December corn $3.77 1/4, down 5 1/2. July beans closing at $9.08 1/2, up 3. August beans up 2 1/2, $9.14. September beans up 1 3/4, $9.20. July wheat closing at $4.90, down 9 1/2. September wheat down 12, $5.01 1/2, and December wheat down 13, $5.21 1/4. July bean meal $3.35.50, down $3.40. July bean oil up 7 cents, $29.57. In current electronic overnight trading, July corn down 6 3/4, September corn down 7 1/4, December corn down 7 1/2 at $3.69 3/4. July beans in the overnight down 23, August beans down 23, September beans down 23, $8.97. July wheat in the overnight down 8 1/2, September wheat down 9 1/4, December wheat down 8 1/4, $5.13. In the outside markets, August Brent crude oil $75.34, up $1.90. The August gold contract $12.8150, up $1.40. In the livestock market, July lean hogs $83.72, up $2. August lean hogs up $1.17, $79.42. June live cattle $108.30, down 15 cents. August live cattle up 40 cents, $105.17. August feeder cattle $148.97, that's up $1. September feeder cattle up 85 cents, $149.12. Illinois direct barrels and gilts trading steady on Monday at 52 to 59. That's the RFD Ag Market Summary for this Tuesday morning. I'm Jim Taylor for the RFD Radio Network.
Let's check Ag News on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLoss Yonke. Not surprising, once again, temperatures were more than average last week in the latest report from Illinois Ag Statistics. Based on conditions as of Sunday, we were 4.5 degrees more than average, 76.6 degrees. Precip, we were at 1.4 inches for statewide average. Quite variable. East-southeast Illinois came in a little more than 4 inches. 4 of the reporting districts didn't even have 1 inch of rainfall last week. Corn condition as of Sunday is 29% excellent, 52% good, 15% fair, 4% either poor or very poor. Soybeans are at 23% excellent, 54% good, 19% fair, 4% poor or very poor. Wheat harvest as of Sunday is 30% complete, ahead of the 5-year average of 19. First cutting of alfalfa is 95% complete, a little bit ahead of the 5-year average. It was second cutting at 9%, which is right about on schedule. In D.C. news, USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue visiting a puppy kennel in Maryland yesterday had time to visit the dogs, but when it came time to answer reporters' questions about the latest trade conflict with China, that was a different story. Our Washington correspondent Matt Kay reports.
Perdue, a former veterinarian, came to Farmstead's Puppy Paradise for ideas to improve kennels nationwide, some long seen as puppy mills. And after weeks of answering questions on the damage from the president's trade wars with China and others, Perdue needed to find a paradise, though it looked like fun at first until the trade issue came up.
Mr. Secretary, I think they know who you are.
They act like it, don't they? All righty. Thanks, guys.
We had a quick comment on trade, sir. We don't have time, sorry. The response from a press aide, as Secretary Perdue, surrounded by his communications team and security detail, scurried to the door and their waiting Chevy Suburban. Perdue's failure to take press questions after an hour and a half at the kennel stood in stark contrast to major farm groups' concerns. Chinese tariffs on U.S. soybeans, beef, pork, and other goods will do lasting damage in that huge market. Farmers for Free Trade Executive Director Brian Keel.
If China is the issue, and intellectual property theft is a very real issue, let's address that. Let's do it in a coalition setting where we bring all the trading partners together who trade with China, get everyone singing off the same sheet of music, and apply maximum pressure on China. And then rather than building a coalition, we've started whacking all of our allies. So we're whacking Canada, we're whacking Mexico, we're whacking the EU.
The very countries Keel says the U.S. needs to put pressure on China. And those countries have now placed tariffs of their own on U.S. farm goods, while adding new uncertainty to the fate of trade talks like NAFTA. For the RFD Radio Network, Matt Kay, Washington.
There is a new version of WOTUS, Waters of the U.S. The 2015 rule came under scrutiny from the beginning. It is being repealed and replaced. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the Army Corps of Engineers have a new draft. The agencies recently sent their draft proposed rule to the White House Office of Management and Budget for review. Public comment will be accepted after the review process is complete, according to EPA, and from the story online at farmweeknow.com, written by Farm Week's Dina Stroish. American Farm Bureau Federation President Zibby Duvall, as part of a statement, said, quote, "We need to continue to work diligently to support the Environmental Protection Agency's efforts to formally repeal the rule." I'm DeLoss Yonke on the RFD Radio Network.
Good morning. This is Dan Hicks from Freezotis Weather with the early morning ag weather update on the RFD Radio Network for this Tuesday morning. Daytime highs in the upper 80s to mid-90s were common across a large part of the Midwest once again yesterday, with cooler readings in some of the northern areas as a cool front now begins to move very slowly southward into the region. Showers and thunderstorms have moved a bit farther south in the Midwest the past 24 hours, including parts of northern Illinois, where a few far northern locations have picked up over an inch of rain since early on Monday. This boundary will be pushing very slowly southward across the Midwest through the end of the week, and at times will stall across the region. Warm and humid conditions will continue in central and southern Illinois today, and in the southern part of the state into tomorrow, before some cooling gradually starts to work its way farther south into the region later on in the week. Daytime highs will cool down into the 70s and 80s across the northern half of the region the next few days, with 80s and 90s continuing farther south. Then readings will cool in the southern areas later in the week. This system will produce frequent thunderstorms across the central and northern Midwest the next 24 hours, and rain chances will gradually spread over the entire region through mid to late this week as this system pushes slowly southward. There will be the potential for some fairly substantial rainfall across the Midwest from this system, with some 1 to 3 inch amounts likely in many areas by the time we get to Friday and Saturday. Locally heavier amounts are possible from some of the stronger thunderstorms, causing some local areas of flooding across the Midwest. Looking ahead into the 6 to 10 day time frame, it looks like temperatures will average closer to normal across the Midwest, with warmer conditions occurring farther south. Rainfall should average near to below normal in the northern Midwest, near to above normal during the 6 to 10 in the central and south.
Radio. It's nothing new. It's been here all along, with free entertainment, news, sports, music, and information. It's not just part of life, it's part of who we are. You know which station is going to tell you the score of the game, which one's going to give you a laugh in the morning, which one is going to give you something to sing along with. You know where to turn when the weather gets rough. When something big happens, good or bad, you know where to go because radio has been here all along. Radio is part of your community, woven into the fabric of what makes home, home. And now, radio has evolved to move with you with the Next Radio app and your FM-enabled phone. Just plug in your headphones to start experiencing radio in a whole new way while using way less battery and data than streaming apps. Check out the live guide to see and interact with live radio stations. Easily find your favorites like the one you're listening to right now. And as always, it's totally free. Download the Next Radio app today. Next Radio. Live and local wherever you go.
With SRN News, I'm Rich Thomason in Washington. Amid all of the outrage over the temporary separation of some illegal immigrant parents from their children at the border, President Trump meets with House Republicans later today to discuss immigration reform. Mr. Trump has been urging Congress to deal with the crisis, and there are 2 bills pending in the House. Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen says something must be done, and soon.
Those who criticize the enforcement of our laws have offered only one countermeasure: open borders, the quick release of all illegal alien families, and the decision not to enforce our laws. This policy would be disastrous.
After spending a good part of yesterday before the Senate Judiciary Committee, today the Justice Department's Inspector General testifies before a House panel. Lawmakers are anxious to hear more about the FBI's handling of the Clinton email investigation.
The IG report was highly critical of the FBI and the Department of Justice, but it also found no evidence that political bias affected the ultimate outcome of the investigation. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana tells Inspector General Michael Horowitz he can't believe it.
Do you honestly believe that the American people are going to look at this report and look at those emails and not believe that there was bias and people acting on bias and that the fix was in at the FBI?
I completely understand the concern, Senator.
The IG also said the issue of possible collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia was not the subject of this report. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
Also at srnnews.com, flash flooding across the upper Midwest has claimed at least 1 life, also causing a lot of damage in parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota. Wall Street worried about the possibility of a U.S.-China trade war. It's dragging stock futures down sharply this morning. Dow futures off 324 points. NASDAQ futures down 91. S&P futures 30 points in the red. This is SRN News. The White House has a message for evangelical Christians concerning the border crisis.
Many conservative Christian churches and leaders are dismayed about the separation of some immigrant families at the southern border. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says Christians should see it as a call to action.
They should open up their doors and help facilitate some of these individuals. I think that's their calling, that's the mission of the church, and they should certainly fulfill that.
She urges Christians concerned about policy to contact their lawmakers and demand immigration reform. Greg Clugston, the White House.
Christians still having problems in Iraq. International Christian Concern reports that while the defeat of ISIS has prompted some believers to return to their homes, many are finding that their Muslim neighbors don't want them back. One returning Christian tells ICC, "We have many Muslims who have the same ideas as ISIS. They hate us." Christians slowly trying to rebuild their communities. This is SRN News. The Pentagon makes good on a pledge made by President Trump during his recent summit with North Korea's leader.
The Pentagon has formally suspended major military drills planned for August with South Korea. The decision was expected. President Donald Trump announced after his recent summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un that he would suspend the exercises, saying a continuation would be provocative. South Korea will continue the August exercises with other Pacific nations. Defense Department spokeswoman Dana White says no decisions have been made on any other U.S. military exercises with South Korea. Mike Gracia, Washington.
The FDA considering approval of the first prescription drug derived from the marijuana plant. The drug, produced by British pharmaceutical firm GW Pharmaceuticals, would be used to treat 2 rare forms of epilepsy in children. A decision on whether to approve that drug is expected from the FDA by the end of the month. More details at srnnews.com.
There are a ton of social networking websites, but one stands apart for a very special reason. This one saves lives. It's MatchingDonors.com. MatchingDonors.com links organ donors with people in need of kidney and other transplants. In the U.S., 19 people die each day waiting for an organ transplant, most of them for kidneys. If you've ever considered becoming a living organ donor, or if you have someone in need of an organ transplant, visit MatchingDonors.com. Home of the greatest gift of all, the gift of life. MatchingDonors.com.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump will travel to the Capitol late this afternoon to discuss immigration with House Republicans. NPR's Kelsey Snell reports the meeting comes amid confusion about what legislation Trump is willing to support.
The meeting comes as House Republican leaders are preparing for votes on a pair of immigration bills. Trump is expected to use the meeting to clarify what immigration policies he will support after a weekend of confusion on the issue. House GOP leaders had been working with moderates, conservatives, and the White House on an immigration compromise. It was expected to get more votes than an existing hardline conservative bill, and Trump was expected to back the compromise. But all that changed Friday when Trump told Fox News that he wouldn't support what was called the moderate bill. He then reversed that position again about 9 hours later. The rapid shift has left many members confused ahead of what is expected to be a contentious vote on Trump's signature domestic policy issue. Kelsey Snell, NPR News, the Capitol.
Trump and House Republicans are also expected to debate the president's policy of taking migrant children away from their parents when they cross the southern U.S. border. Members of both parties are harshly criticizing the president and demanding he immediately stop the separations. The U.S. and South Korea have called off some joint military drills. Jason Strother reports from Seoul the cancellation is intended to build trust with North Korea.
South Korea's defense ministry says in order to keep talks with Pyongyang going, these exercises needed to be canceled. The drills were set for August and in the past involved around 60,000 American and Korean soldiers. The maneuvers included some live fire practice, but mainly computerized war simulations.
Jason Strother reporting. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is in Beijing for talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Kim is expected to discuss his summit last week in Singapore with President Trump. This is Kim's third visit to China this year. A human and a computer faced off at IBM offices in San Francisco last night. As NPR's Laura Seidel reports, it was the first formal human-computer debate, and some experts say it was a breakthrough for artificial intelligence.
The computer took part in 2 debates with 2 different experienced debaters. The computer did not know the topic ahead of time. In order to make its argument, it had to search through millions of documents and cull together phrases. It was able to make a 4-minute opening statement and respond to the human counter-argument. The audience, made up largely of journalists, was surveyed about their opinion on a topic before the debate. Then they were polled afterwards to see if they'd changed their minds. Both the computer and the human won a debate. But don't expect your smart speaker to start arguing with you. Initially, IBM says the computer will be used to help doctors make better decisions by showing the pros and cons of a treatment plan, or it could help lawyers make better arguments. Laura Seidel, NPR News.
It's NPR. China is warning it will respond if President Trump carries out his threat of new tariffs. Trump has directed U.S. officials to identify up to $200 billion of Chinese goods for potential tariffs in response to Chinese trade actions. Rapper and singer XXXTentacion was shot to death Monday in Broward County, Florida. The controversial 20-year-old performer's second album debuted #1 on the Billboard chart in March. NPR's Anastasia Tsiolkas has more.
The shooting took place Monday afternoon outside a motorcycle dealership in Deerfield Beach, Florida. The Broward County Sheriff's Office says that XXXTentacion was leaving the dealership when 2 armed suspects approached his car and fired in what may have been an attempted robbery. XXXTentacion, whose real name was Jose Onfroy, had a complicated and troubled history. At the time of his death, he was facing numerous criminal charges, including that he physically abused and falsely imprisoned his pregnant girlfriend. He was also accused of witness tampering and harassment. He had been released from house arrest in March in order to earn income from touring while he awaited trial. Anastasia Tsilkas, NPR News, New York.
The United Nations Refugee Agency says that nearly 69 million people were forced from their homes last year. The agency blames war, other violence, and persecution. The UN says that an average of one person was displaced every 2 seconds in 2017. The greatest number of refugees was in Democratic Republic of Congo. This is NPR.
Hey, Steve Harvey here for the Illinois Broadcasters Association, and in a recent survey, the Illinois Emergency Management Agency was asked to name the top 5 items that every Illinois family needs to have in their home's emergency disaster kit. Check out these answers. Water, can't live without it. Number 2, non-perishable food. Well, after all, a man gotta eat, right? Number 3, weather radio, and make sure you got fresh batteries too. Number 4, flashlight. Even more reason to have fresh batteries on hand. Number 5, first aid kit. Look, there's no reason to feud over what items to put in your family's emergency disaster kit. Get the answers and more at ready.illinois.gov. That's ready.illinois.gov.
Sponsored by the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, aired in cooperation with the Illinois Broadcasters Association and this station.
From CBC News, it's The World This Hour. I'm Joe Cummings. We start in Washington with U.S. President Trump. He is going to Capitol Hill today to push for immigration reform. This as his hardline interpretation of the country's existing laws continues to draw criticism for the human suffering it's causing at the Mexico-U.S. border. Here's Lindsay Duncombe.
When Donald Trump shows up on Capitol Hill this morning, he will face growing concern from elected Republicans that outrage over this Trump policy could cost them their jobs and even potentially control of Congress. This feels different from other crises in the sense that we're hearing criticism from more than the usual suspects. Fred Upton, a Michigan representative, calls the policy ugly and inhumane. The Utah representative, Mia Love, says it's terrible. But in the face of that criticism from traditionally supportive groups such as evangelical Christians, the president does not appear to be backing down. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Washington.
Meanwhile, the United Nations is saying today the number of people around the world forced from their homes by armed conflict is now at a record high. The UN has set that number at 68 million. Ongoing conflicts in Syria, South Sudan, and Congo, as well as the exodus of Muslim Rohingya from Myanmar, are driving the increase. Now to Ottawa, where the Senate is once again debating the Trudeau government's marijuana bill. A number of Senate amendments have been accepted by the House of Commons, but many haven't. And this sets the stage for a possible legislative standoff. Nick Gamache reports.
Senators now have a choice: pass the bill and clear the final legislative hurdle before marijuana becomes legal in Canada, or bring back some of the amendments, the most contentious one being the change that would allow provinces to ban people from growing pot at home and create a legislative ping-pong match with the House. Independent Senator André Pratt says his colleagues have to weigh the consequences of a showdown with MPs.
This issue is important, but it's not crucial, certainly not important enough to create a political crisis over it.
Given the government's timetable of having marijuana legal in Canada at some point this summer, a fight between the House and the Senate means the bill must pass or nobody can go home for the summer break, which is currently scheduled for the end of the week. Nick Gamache, CBC News, Ottawa.
The federal riding of Chicoutimi-Lafiore has a new member of parliament.
Les conservateurs, présentement, c'est l'option au Québec. C'est l'option des Québécois parce que...
That is Conservative candidate Richard Martel, the winner of yesterday's by-election. He takes the riding from the Liberals. Martel, a former junior hockey coach, captured more than 50% of the vote. A big issue in the campaign was the U.S. tariffs on aluminum and how the Trudeau government is dealing with the Trump administration. The Chicoutimi region is one of Canada's biggest aluminum producers. A Toronto man appears in court this morning facing a murder charge after a man was struck and killed yesterday by a Toronto subway train. Greg Ross has more.
A 57-year-old Toronto man is facing first-degree murder charges after he was captured on surveillance video. Homicide detective Rob North says it happened shortly after the Monday morning rush at one of the city's busiest subway stations. Police are not releasing the suspect's name, and they have yet to identify the victim. They say he is an Asian man in his late 50s or early 60s. North says it doesn't appear the victim and the suspect knew each other.
Our allegations at this time are that there's an interaction between our accused and our deceased is sort of pushed and falls under the train.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
The Lethbridge Hurricanes of the Western Junior Hockey League will release more details today about a campfire accident involving two of its players and a former teammate. They are all in hospital being treated for burns. One of the young men is in a medically induced coma. Here is RCMP Corporal Troy Savinkoff.
And we do believe something was added to the fire as they were having difficulties lighting it. We still haven't determined conclusively exactly what was added to it.
The RCMP saying that alcohol was not a factor. And that is the world this hour. I'm Joe Cummings.
Do you or a loved one have a chronic condition such as diabetes, a heart condition, or asthma? Do you or a loved one have a severe allergy to a certain food, drug, or insect? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are a candidate for an electronic medical alert watch, the alternative to the traditional medical ID bracelet. An electronic medical alert watch visibly communicates a person's health conditions, drug, food, and other allergies, and other critical information to help make a diagnosis and save a life. Take control of your health. Protect yourself or your loved ones and order an electronic medical alert watch today. Visit www.epill.com. That's epill.com. Affordable, free shipping, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Remember, www.epill.com. That's EPILL.com. ePill.
Welcome to the Newsworthy. All the day's news in less than 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. Thank you so much for listening. Today, trade tensions, a space force, and the battle at the border continues. Plus, a new airline, Apple's emergency plan, and Juneteenth. All that and much more in less than 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. Today is Tuesday, June 19th. You ready? Let's do this. Trade tensions are heating up again between the U.S. and China, and the back and forth is getting closer and closer to a full-on trade war. The Wall Street Journal reports President Trump is now threatening another round of tariffs, this time an extra 10% tax on $200 billion in Chinese imports. That's on top of the tariffs on $50 billion worth of imports announced just last week and set to go into effect next month. China threatened to retaliate right away, so President Trump is now threatening more as a warning. Trump says China's trade practices are unfair, and this must be done to stop them. Critics say American families will be the ones who suffer most because it'll affect businesses and the economy. To be continued. The controversy and the outrage continues over kids being taken from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border. Lawmakers are still planning to consider new legislation this week, but the number of critics seems to be growing in the meantime. The White House, though, is holding firm. President Trump now says the U.S. won't be a migrant camp. The Homeland Security Secretary says illegal actions must have consequences, that these families are crossing the border illegally, but she said the children are being treated well. But some critics believe the children are being used as a negotiating tool, a way to try and force funding for Trump's border wall. And they say it's just cruel. ProPublica got a hold of secretly recorded audio where you can hear kids who were recently separated from their parents crying and calling for mom and dad. Most of the kids are sent to government-run shelters when their parents are detained. Even some prominent Republicans are going against what the White House is saying and speaking up against what's happening with these families, including top lawmakers and former First Lady Laura Bush. So what exactly will Congress be considering this week, and will any new legislation actually pass? Stay tuned. President Trump wants to start a space force, as in the Air Force, but in space. A sixth separate branch of the armed forces. The president said it's not enough to be in space, but that there should be, quote, American dominance in space. All the details aren't clear just yet. Right now, the Air Force actually does have the Air Force Space Command. So would that be handed over? Not sure. But not everyone thinks this is a good idea. Critics are concerned about the cost, and some are worried about other missions we should be focusing on. Either way, the White House said the president has asked the Department of Defense to get it going. We'll see what happens next. 2 different car companies are dealing with trouble right now. First up, Audi. Reuters reports German authorities arrested the Audi CEO. The same guy sits on Volkswagen's board since VW owns Audi. Why was he arrested? Well, it's all stemming from that emissions scandal that started about 3 years ago. Remember, VW and Audi were accused of using illegal software to cheat on emissions tests. It led to a bunch of recalls, some criminal charges in the U.S., and investigators in Europe are still looking into exactly who knew what and when. The other car company dealing with trouble this week is Tesla. CEO Elon Musk says the company has been sabotaged, or that's at least what he put in an email to employees. CNBC reports Musk described how an employee changed the code on some products and then sent out sensitive company data without permission. He told employees to be on the lookout. It's not all bad news in the auto industry, though. Volvo says it'll be ramping up the amount of recycled materials it uses in cars. It wants to make sure at least 25% of the plastics used in new Volvo car models come from recycled materials by the year 2025. So, for example, the carpet might have fibers made from recycled plastic bottles. Reuters reports many big companies are working to use more materials that can be recycled later, but this actually goes a step further, to use recycled materials in the manufacturing. The United Nations gave it a thumbs up. From cars to planes, there could be a new low-cost airline coming. Airline Weekly reports the founder of JetBlue is working on a new airline called Moxie Airways, but it's still in the funding stage. It would apparently service smaller airports around the country. Bloomberg reports it would likely be similar to JetBlue, where it would offer spacious seats and Wi-Fi, but then there would be fees for other services like snacks and seat assignments. Moxie might be ready to fly in the year 2020. We'll get to several more news stories to know today, but first, thanks to today's sponsor, Day in the Life podcast. This is for you if you've ever wondered what it's really like for a Hollywood actress, an Instagram influencer, an NFL coach, or a speechwriter.
Because a speech is a story. That's what it is. It's you starting at one point and getting your audience to another point.
This show takes you behind the scenes as guests share a typical day in their life's work. Go to dayinthelifepodcast.com or search Day in the Life wherever you listen to podcasts. Video game addiction just became an official disease, at least according to the World Health Organization. It'll specifically be called gaming disorder, and it's expected to be a formal disease by next year. For those who struggle with this, the New York Times reports the new classification will help make sure insurance companies cover treatment and may encourage people to get help if they're ignoring other parts of their lives to play video games. The gaming industry does not love this new plan, though, and says games are often educational and therapeutic. 2.6 billion people play video games around the world, and that reportedly includes 2/3 of American homes. Android users rejoice. Google is rolling out Messages for Web, meaning you can now sync and send text messages from your Android straight from your laptop or desktop. TechCrunch says it's Google's response to the iPhone's iMessage, and Google's version will let you send stickers, GIFs, emojis, and images, as well as text. Apple also announced something new, something to help out in an emergency. In the next iPhone software update, iOS 12, people who call 911 from their iPhone will automatically share their exact location with first responders, which of course is helpful if seconds count. Apple says the data will only go to the 911 center responding. Expect that new software update later this year, possibly in September. Today is Juneteenth, aka Freedom Day. It's a celebration of the end of slavery in the U.S. It was on June 19th, 1865, when the last slaves in Texas were freed. And yes, that was a couple years after President Abraham Lincoln made slavery illegal. It just took time for everyone to find out and actually comply. Many people celebrate Juneteenth like the 4th of July with parties and picnics. All right, let's talk about the big winners at the MTV Movie and TV Awards. Black Panther got the most awards with 4, including Best Movie. As for TV, Netflix's Stranger Things was the big winner with 3 awards, including Best Show. The host, Tiffany Haddish, also won an award for her role in the movie Girls Trip. And And that's it for today. Thanks again for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And of course, I love it when you share the Newsworthy with your friends. If you want to read more about any of the news stories mentioned in today's episode, just go to the homepage of thenewsworthy.com. From there, click episodes and find today's date. The Newsworthy is ready for you to listen every weekday by 4 in the morning Eastern Time. So we'll chat again tomorrow. Have a great day.
The game doesn't stop. Neither should you. Wherever you go, the game goes too using the enabled FM chip in your phone and the Next Radio app.
The Next Radio app brings real FM radio to your phone.
Just plug in your headphones and listen to the Next Radio app, and you'll save major data and battery life compared to streaming apps. And there are no blackouts, so you never miss the games you love played on your local FM radio station. Download the Next Radio app to enhance your radio listening experience. And keep going. With no blackouts and restrictions, the game follows you. Your favorite team, host, and commentator go with you.
The best thing is, it's all totally free. No subscriptions, no fees. Get off the sidelines and download the Next Radio app today, free.
Next Radio, live and local, wherever you go.
Hello, I'm Jerry Smith with the BBC News. Minority rights groups in Italy have fiercely criticised a decision by the country's new far-right interior minister to count and potentially deport members of the Roma community. Matteo Salvini made the comments on Monday. James Reynolds reports from Rome.
Matteo Salvini has never made any secret of his distaste for the Roma community. Now that he's in government, he wants to find out how many Roma are living in the country and where they come from. Mr. Salvini told a TV channel that Roma with Italian citizenship would unfortunately be allowed to stay in the country. Others would be deported, and children who are not in school would be taken into care. One minority rights organisation says that a census based on ethnic origin would be illegal.
China's foreign ministry has urged the United States to end what it described as its damaging words and deeds, after Mr. Trump complained that Beijing appeared to have no intention of changing what he called its unfair practices in response to previously announced US tariffs. John Sudworth is in Beijing.
The first tranche of tariffs on $50 billion worth of Chinese goods announced on Friday, China responding very quickly, and now the retaliation again as Donald Trump threatens to escalate things beyond a level I think that anybody had imagined. $200 billion worth of Chinese goods is what he's threatening to add to that list. China's still refusing to blink. All of the statements, not just out of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs today, but also out of China's Commerce Ministry, making it very clear that China doesn't want this, but if a trade war is what's coming its way, it won't back down.
Princess Takamado of Japan is in Russia to watch her country's opening World Cup football match. The visit marks a slight warming of ties between the two regional rivals. More from our Asia-Pacific editor, Celia Hatton.
It's the first visit to Russia by a Japanese royal in over a century. The Japanese media says Princess Takamado will be in the country for 8 days. She's watching Japan take on Colombia in the World Cup and will stay on for their match against Senegal. Though low-key, her visit confirms that ties between Tokyo and Moscow have improved slightly. Earlier this year, the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said his country's relations with Moscow had the most potential of any bilateral relationship. That's in spite of a continuing dispute over islands claimed by both countries.
Celia Hatton. Indonesian rescue workers are battling stormy weather to try to find survivors from a ferry that sank in Sumatra with at least 80 passengers on board. Emergency crews have already saved 18 people from rough waters on Lake Toba. The ferry was licensed to carry 60 people, but Indonesian officials say as many as 130 could have been on board. World News from the BBC. There's been fierce fighting in Yemen for control of the airport in Hodeidah, more than a week into a major offensive by forces of the internationally recognised government against Houthi rebels. Sources for the anti-Houthi alliance say they've now taken the main airport buildings, effectively giving them control of the airport. The island state of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean is offering foreigners the chance to obtain citizenship in exchange for a non-refundable contribution of $1 million to the National Sovereign Wealth Fund. Applicant spouses and dependents are also eligible with an additional contribution of $100,000 per family member. The scheme has been condemned by opposition politicians who say nationality is not a product to be sold. The Chief Minister of the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, Mehbooba Mufti, has resigned. Her decision came shortly after India's governing party, the BJP, pulled out of the coalition government, which was led by her party, the PDP. Shalu Yadav reports from Delhi.
The BJP said it was pulling out of a coalition with Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti's party because her government had failed to control security in Indian-administered Kashmir. Delhi has been battling armed militant groups who are fighting against Indian rule in the region. Counter-insurgency operations in the state were halted during the holy month of Ramadan, but that was revoked after the killing of a prominent journalist last week. The coalition, which has been in power for 3 years, has been strained by ongoing violence and disagreements over how to manage a peace process.
A major gas plant in northeastern Mozambique has reportedly been put on lockdown following reports that Islamist militants are planning another attack in the region. The reports say staff at the Anadarko petroleum facility on the border with Tanzania have been warned of a potential threat. BBC News.
Today we decided to walk to school. The light counted. 15, 14, 41, 31, 13. We took a left on Carroll Street. Danny's smart, but he gets distracted. I realized he forgot his homework. I hope he doesn't have another bad day at school.
When you can see learning and attention issues from their side, you can be on their side. That's why there's Understood.org, a free resource for the parents of the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues. Go from misunderstanding to Understood.org. Brought to you by Understood and the Ad Council.
This is Betty White. I know you don't need one more thing to worry about, but listen. High blood pressure can cause kidney damage, blindness, heart attack, stroke. And you can have high blood pressure even if you feel all right. 1 in 7 adults has it, but it's easy to get your blood pressure checked, and you can treat it if it is too high. So don't worry about it. Don't ignore it. Just see your doctor and check it out.
For your free booklet, visit the Will Rogers Institute at wrinstitute.org and find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
I'm John Stashower. So just when did Juan Soto, the Nationals' 19-year-old phenom, hit his first Major League home run? It was believed to have been in his second game for Washington, May 21st. Or was it this one from yesterday?
Swinging a long drive right field. Forget about it. He's done it to the Yankees again. That one almost clears the upper deck and one bounces onto the concourse. That's one of the longest home runs we've seen in that direction here at Nationals Park since 2008. Juan Soto homers in a game that started on May 15th. On June the 18th, is it his first home run or his sixth?
And Nationals radio to call. That's the question, because it was the completion of a game that started in mid-May, and that's when the game is actually recorded. Regardless, the kid's got 6 homers, 25 games, 3 of them against the Yankees, and that one yesterday went 444 feet. Nationals won 5-3, but then the Yankees won the makeup of a game that was completely rained out last month, 4-2. Bryce Harper shaved his beard. That didn't help him get out of his slump. 0 for 4, 1 for his last 24. He's hitting .212. Here's how the Mets game started last night at Colorado.
Now the pitch. Swinging a high fly ball. Well hit right center. On the run, Blackman, the center fielder. He won't get it. It is off the base of the wall, in play. Nimmo's flying. He's going to hit third. The ball's still out in right field. Nimmo trying for an inside the Parker. The ball rolls to the plate, and Nimmo scores standing. An inside the park home run for Brandon Nimmo.
WOR the call. A big night for Nimmo. Another home run. This one over the wall. Then a 2-run double. The Mets 12-2 over the Rockies. Finally scoring some runs for Jacob deGrom. Looking like Rudy Gay will become an NBA free agent, opting out in San Antonio. First World Cup game today, Colombia against Japan. Ooma Office, most reliable, simplest to use, easiest to install business phone, perfect for 5 employees or 50. Ooma Office, #1 rated by PC Mag readers at $19.95 per user per month. You'll save tons. Ooma.com.